Pulingina. This presentation was written and recorded by a Palawa sister girl on Wurundjeri lands, with respects paid to elders past, present, and emerging. I am Samara-Jade Sendek. Of course, I am a Dark Lady of the Sith, but moving on. You may be wondering who this is. I am a narrative designer and QA technician based out of Naarm in so-called Australia. I was a writer and narrative designer on Game of Thrones' Tale of Crows. You can see some of my written work in Hardwired Island and Gender Euphoria. I make a lot of my bread and butter bouncing between indie studios and startups such as Dragon Bear Studios, Ligara, Audacious, etc., etc. Before that, I was known for dialogue-driven microgames, and now I do... right now I'm doing a lot of G14 classified material. So... Game devs, we need to have a talk. We need to have a fucking talk. Love the queer community. No pressure. Welcome to Queerbaiting, once bitten, twice as shy. Or, as I found out during a proofreading run, it's once bitten, twice shy. But I've only ever heard it once bitten, twice as shy, so... C'est la vie! Anyhow, we're having this talk, and why we're having this talk? Simply put, we're tired of saying the same stuff for so long, nothing about us without us. And this isn't a recent issue. Queerbaiting has been a problem since before Glee, the 100, and Supernatural. I, on many occasions, dress like a Disney villainess because of a not-so-subtle othering of queer people. Case in point. Except, directly attacking us queers is so distasteful when they could be making a tidy side profit catering to us. So let's start with the definition. To queerbait is a verb. A marketing technique used to attract queer audiences that hints at but does not otherwise depict a queer character or theme. In short, people are selling you a dodgy product that seems true on the surface, until it isn't. Sam and Bucky have feelings for each other, until a fan pushes too far and Anthony Mackie takes a public fall. Lexer and Clark look like good lesbian representation in the far distant post-apocalyptic future, until Lexer is a gay that needs to be buried. Look, people die. It happens. And I wrestled with a lot of sweaty guys with glistening muscles before I discovered dresses with pockets. So what? But let's look for some concrete examples. We want a queer depiction that survives, that its developers affirmed was queer, isn't played for shock value or comedy. So let's go with some easy ones. Destiel, Cat Dora, and Sherlock Watson. Art from the Tumblr glory days of the late ooze is about where Destiel began. This bait continued on Supernatural for roughly 10 years. Bit over, details are a little squiffy. Details a little bit squiffy for the time frame of this project. Dean and Castiel have a long-term friendship with something deeper implied. The premise is simple. Two same-sex characters whose relationship evolves over time, but doesn't necessarily act on love in the traditional sense straight away. The Mary Sue, a curated educational space on women's representation, noted some affectionate language, in particular, and I Need You from Dean ended mind control over Castiel in a middling season. Season 13 brings us, finally, a loved confession to Dean. Yay! Under the premise that Castiel dies 20 seconds later to go to the angel and demon afterlife to stop someone else from dying. No development, gay angel buried, shock at over 9,000 volts. Way to go, CW, really championing the rainbow cause here. Pot shots aside, next up is Kat Dora in 2018's She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. The show flips the script a little bit over its 18-month runtime. To wit, Catra and Adora have a long-term friendship with something deeper implied. The premise is simple. Two same-sex characters whose relationship evolves over time, but doesn't necessarily act on love in the traditional sense straight away. Sound familiar? People were outright burned with Supernatural, so you'd be forgiven for thinking this is a clam slam waiting to happen. Noel Stevenson had a plan, however. There's a lot of deliberate imagery across the show. Much of one episode takes place in a prom. You have two adolescent girls showing up at a dead ball and dancing together, one in a dress, the other in a tux, with lingering hands, teen angst, and innuendos galore. You can't really get much more on the nose with that. In the interest of time, let's skip to the series end. There's a big declaration of love and a smooch. What is different here is that the show itself is exploring the relationship and the build-up to it. It's not an endless will they or won't they. The tension is the point. There's no shock. The relationship is affirmed. There are discussed themes. Tasteful, accurate representation. And before we go, one elephant in the room. Mishandled writing and stagecraft. BBC Wales' Sherlock consistently said there was nothing intended to be read with a queer lens. Sherlock and Watson love each other, but not in that fashion. Subtext and mishandled writing is not strictly a bait, but even an unintentional one is just as damaging. You risk offsiding your audience for anything between a flat joke to a weak scene. Now, if they were dangling the chain a little with, then, maybe. We never know. Then it's a good sign they were punching down. And people might have noticed I was calling out live shows, except... Sorry, game devs. You might recognize a few of these accompanied, with, So, we're talking about queer baiting. We're not strictly speaking talking about homophobia, homophobia in the overt sense. We're talking about, other things. Let's extrapolate a little, because some of these faces were actually course-corrected over a development cycle. So, without further ado, it's fine to have parallel themes and cold reads in your game. Queer people do not hold the monopoly on these sorts of themes and literary techniques. But be aware of the symbolism and tropes you're using. Please, for the love of every atom of stardust in you, examine them faithfully. Let's try and keep this simple, because we're tackling a systemic issue here. Firstly, we have games that have unexplored themes or characters who are queer below the surface reading. Dig a little deeper into these games and you see parallels between a queer group and the character. Secondly, we have games that had queer themes or characters baited in earlier development, but course-corrected to proper representation and catharsis. Osiris in particular was alluded to be gay, and then it took a little while for Destiny to actually present that in a respectable manner. In most cases, we'll explore why. I recommend you actually shut this down by the next heartbeat or get a lot of consultants aboard. Osiris pulled it off, but we'll go into the nitty-gritty in a bit. But for the most part, Osiris is now no longer a bait, is actually a gay man now. 10 thumbs up. Third, and the most devastating one for the developer and the audience, is a queerbait through miscommunicated writing or mishandled themes or mishandled marketing. This gets tricky even before localization, but every developer in this, watching this video, owes a responsibility to their audience. The goal here is tasteful, accurate representation. We'll have examples of this later on. And if this is your only takeaway from the session, please just spare some budget for a consultant and actually listen to them. The purpose of this talk is to give you a diagnostic toolkit so you know exactly what you're looking for. Something harmless to you might keep a kid in the closet for the next year. Okay? You gotta think about this. So let's go from the ground up. You need to know exactly how your bad examples are bad, then we can get to the good stuff. Let's stick to bigger budget games by dint of outreach. People are more likely to have been exposed to these titles and recognize other faces. But let it be known, indies, you are not off the leash. You can make these mistakes too. So first up, we have down here executive meddling. This is not it's not strictly on the core development team. It's all hands on deck. This can be brand managers, this can be marketers, this can be anyone in PR, this can be artists, writers, artists, programmers, and continuity writers, like people coming after the fact. Everyone involved can spoil a good thing. So this here, for those playing at home, is Juhani from 2003's Knights of the Old Republic. The majority of the in-game text gives Juhani very little to discuss her themes or her sexuality. She's a lesbian, by the way. BioWare we'll see them a lot, did try their hardest, and by all accounts had a perfectly relatable lesbian with anger management issues. However, the story I understand is that LucasArts honed in on her queer themes and shoved her into a closet. You can kill. This is sort of like Juhani comes in as your last minute, sort of like your optional last party member. You kill her after you become a Jedi, and her very quietly implied lover joins the Sith. Her blink and miss it romance dialogue with a feminine PC also doesn't impact a relationship with a cishet soldier guy. And worse, a few continuity threads mention her as part of, Revan's entourage. If the gay isn't buried, chuck her in a closet. If the gay is buried, Darkseid makes you queer. This is a botched execution through meddling and missed content. And this isn't a matter of different time, different ethos either. 2017's Breath of the Wild botched trans issues under good intentions. This here is taken from the Gerudo village. Link has to dress femininely to enter. And I say good intentions because Link is assigned masculine at birth in this installment, and the Gerudo refer to Link in feminine terms and after presenting the part. The botch here is that it's a strict reinforcement of gender binary, with an emphasis on passing to make the cut. This is a very dangerous mentality, especially with trans panic still being a legal means to murder transgender people. Moreover, there's no discussion or engagement, only that you dress up to get past society's rules with zero repercussions. It's a botch. One trans consultant could have salvaged something engaging, but I'll also just take the win with nobody calling Link a new half. And nobody be under any illusions. You can triple whammy a botch without even realizing it, like 2009's Persona 4. For context in Japan, the queer stories here are actually riveting stories of self-determination. Kanji over here is a juvenile delinquent who just wants to sew and make cute toys, traditionally feminine pursuits, while fearing rejection from people around him. Naoto, the detective prince, is from a family of ace detectives who fears she'll never be accepted as a woman in policing. Yukiko and Chie are friends closer than sisters, with Yukiko hoping to leave her designated future and Chie envious of Yukiko's femininity. Now on paper, Kanji is just scared of everyone and becomes scary in turn. Naoto can excel as a woman in a GCAP profession, and Yukiko and Chie can resolve their unhealthy expectations for each other. The botch? West of Poland, we've already cleared this. The Western context now centers on Kanji's repressed bisexuality. It now centers on Naoto's inner self wanting sexual reassignment surgery and hating being assigned feminine at birth. It centers on Yukiko calling Chie the prince to her princess, hoping Chie will rescue her from a designated future. And It centers on Chie being so envious of Yukiko, she feels she needs to dominate and chaperone her at all points. In the end, Kanji resolves to make toys, Naoto bluntly states, "I am a woman," and Chie and Yukiko never mention their feelings again. Unengaged themes, queer text shunted, Kanji made the butt of homophobic jokes, others kept in the closet. This is a queer bait. You must consider cultural context in your localization and design. Only Kanji is resolved by the end, but it's so subdued you'd be forgiven for missing it. Now let me reiterate, these aren't strictly malicious. However, these controversies don't create cash, they create resentment. After botching trans representation in Catherine, Atlas has a stink of homophobia to its name. Nintendo has retained some goodwill through Ocarina of Time's portrayal of Link and Sheik. BioWare also rebounded and nailed queer relationships in Jade Empire with Silk Fox, Sky, and Dawnstar. So, moving on, there is also a fine line between a botch and an unexamined queer theme. This can lead to the same perception of a queerbait, but this is more in line with Sherlock and Watson or Frodo and Samwise. It's not intended to be read that way, but the symbolism and motifs are there. So let's start simply with Agent 47. This is a handsome, cold-blooded killer with a professionalism streak that would make HR officials blush. He's on the move constantly and rarely seen in another's arms. Looks asexual and aromantic, is Ace Arrow. Games and expanded media have consistently portrayed 47 as non-responsive to any advances. In the 2007 Timothy Olyphant film, the sex worker he's protecting wants to get frisky in bed. 47, in the span of 20 seconds, lurches between shocked, confused, dismayed, and sedates the sex worker after he tells her to stop, before taking another 20 seconds to process exactly what's just happened. And a watered-down version happens in 2005's Blood Money with a Chinese woman. She kisses 47 to thank him for saving her, and 47 shoves her away with the look of complete shock. He's just, he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know how to respond, and he looks visibly perturbed by, any kind of intimate advances. Looks queer, is queer. It's not really addressed, but points to IO Interactive for consistency. And you can argue his sexuality was genetically engineered out of him and the clone brothers, but I would say this is a stronger case for his Ace Arrow candidacy. Building up, let's look at Lady, the rocket-launching, devil-hunting babe who stared down the series protagonist and lived. She hates her pastor-looking father, who sold his soul to gain demonic power with a burning passion. She carries the series' biggest guns, hunts demons for a living, and her motivation for killing her father is rooted in parental abuse and gaslighting. When she finally confronts her defeated father atop the Tower of Babel, Arkham calls her Mary and pleads for her to spare his life. She says, "My name is Lady. Goodbye, father." Many gunshots later, she breaks down from the trauma and exhaustion. Read that symbolism as a religious father dead-naming his daughter one last time before she cuts him out of her life? It sounds like a trans woman, doesn't it? Looks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's not harmful. I actually think it's one of the better depictions of transgender trauma as symbolism, but it's definitely unexplored. And, as an aside, Devil May Cry is like one of the best straight-written queer stories I've ever come across, but story for another time. Finally, we have a tale from the Borderlands in Axton. Now this builds into the next category of our Queer's Mo scale, but this is unexamined throughout development. Axton, a former Dial Corp commander, was originally written as a straight white soldier boy, one of millions of gormless space marines designed to appeal to the oldest notion of gamer we have. Except there was a bug! It was something of a flirt to women. That bug played the flirty lines with femmes and masks. Gearbox Software went with it and said, "You know what, he's bi now, yay." It's unexamined because it never comes up outside of dialogue, and Gearbox effectively Dumbledored it until DLC. It wasn't until Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep in 2013 that they worked with it. You'd never catch it unless you were paying attention, but you'd also never cotton onto it being a bait. Had Gearbox squashed that bug, Axton would have remained straight, and people would have modded the bug back in. Now, remember, the key here is a queer depiction that survives, that its developers affirmed was queer, and isn't played for shock or comedy. All these conditions have to be met for it to be tasteful, authentic representation. Intent matters. So, the queers in this ragged bunch are either former botches or unexamined queers, but became tasteful, accurate examples through mechanics, barks, or universe rules. They're about faces, 180 flips, shifts in stances. So on bisexuality, let's revisit our old friends at BioWare. Kaiden Alenko, to my present understanding, was always written as a bisexual man. He makes more than a few passing comments to Femme Shepherd about relying on her, feeling powerful with her, and that anything was possible with her. Except, Kaiden makes these same comments to Mask Shepherd. I'm unclear if this was another case of executive meddling, the writer's room feeling like he wouldn't be received well, or it was an apocryphal comment on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but the result was the same. People picked up on it in Mass Effect 1, questioned why there was a pink-on-pink relationship with Liara and Femme Shepherd. Liara's a little complicated under a gender binary lens, but let's keep it simple, stupid. And no blue-on-blue option. Some people modded Kaiden back in as a romanceable option with unused dialogue. However, BioWare brought Kaiden's sexuality back in for the finale, and he will pursue a relationship with the player's shepherd of choice. Uncloseted, tastefully executed, and presented as equally as Cortez, Samantha, and Liara. Another formerly unexamined queer dynamic is Leona and Diana from League of Legends. Riot is no stranger to using queer themes and icons in its flagship title. Tarek's Inception had some unsubtle lines, barks, and developer commentary that hinted at being gay, though his post-2016 developments paint him as an all-loving avatar of protection, and unsubtle lines, barks, and developer commentary hinting he's pan. Vi and Caitlyn are a crime-fighting, bounty-hunting butch and femme duo in a clockwork scene city, sniping rats and punching jokers. Nothing to see there. Leona and Diana are a standout here because of previously baited lines. Riot was flirting with the possibility that Leona and Diana had a thing before Diana was sworn to a sect of the Moon Worshippers, and Leona became a quasi-Spartan Sun Knight. Post-2016, where he works go beyond Dean and Castiel's will they won't they teasing. The two women are presented as diametrically opposed, within a conflicting and torn relationship. Leona is a beloved role model of her society, while Diana is a shunned outcast. Diana is a heretic, while Leona is an ideal. Even in mechanics, Leona supports her team, while Diana acts largely alone. They're poised against each other, but both wish things were different. The key here is an engaged theme. They cannot love each other as they want because society says so. The relationship is doomed because of the people around them. It is a damning call out to dogma interfering with an otherwise healthy, loving relationship and turning it toxic. Now, that said, about-facing is a risky task. You can easily turn it into a botch. Kaiden engages a theme of slowly accepting his feelings for Shepard, regardless of gender. This plays to a real-life analogue of someone coming to terms with a questioned sexuality. Leona and Diana are forced to fight each other on someone else's terms. Sometimes even just, the player's terms. And when it's clear that neither of them want to. Without these backings and re-examined themes, it becomes victim to the Streisand effect. People may see it as you trying to absolve yourself for baiting them in the first place. Back your good intentions with good works. Don't just pay lip to it. Now, the big question. How to get to 10 out of 10 in the first hit. So, let's just revisit what our criteria are. These characters are a queer depiction that survives, that its developers affirmed was queer, isn't played for shock value or comedy. But there's sort of like a fifth one underlying this one, just for a curveball. Their themes are engaged in mechanics, barks, and context. Now this is what will get you the perfect score, bar none. The purpose of this talk, ideally, is getting you to this point. So, let's start with let's start with the oldest here in 2004. The Malkavian vampire, Jeanette. Now, don't get me wrong here. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines has a lot of problematic elements. Some of them veer eerily close to punching down, if not just plain mishandled. Jeanette's sexuality was not one of them. To the player, Jeanette is the second friendly vampire they see. The first being your tutorial mentor, Smiling Jack. In-game lore files imply that Jeanette uses her sexuality as a means to get back at her sister Theresa's control freak tendencies. Muddying the water, Jeanette also uses it as a manipulation and coercion tool. Politics is a merciless business in the world of darkness, so you'd be forgiven. And further muddying the water is a specific line to the player if they're a Nosferatu, a vampire who is either outwardly deformed or causes a deep spiritual revulsion in people. On the inside, we're all dead meat, kitten. Compounding this, she was in an affair with another Nosferatu, the shadow broker Bertram Tongue. Hack the computer in the sister's room and you can see a long list of flings and liaisons for Jeanette. Smiling Jack, the player, masc and femme. She gives you a 3.5, by the way. A girl named Sally, Bertram, and a long list of others. What makes this example timeless is that her sexuality was never framed as a problem. It was a problem for Therese, nobody else. It's an accessory to the conflict in Santa Monica, who can be the reigning power in the region. She manipulates you because of her spat with Therese, not because she is manipulative by nature. And before someone says that Jeanette can die, the Vorman sisters are both meant to survive. They're the archetypical Malkavian characters in the 5th edition tabletop role-playing rulebook. So, score 1 for the pans and the plurals. Next, let's bounce to Revachol for everyone's favourite Hobocop and partner, Harriet Dubois and Kim Kitsuragi. I'd argue the point of Disco Elysium is not the murder case, so much as people trying to make sense of an absurd world. Harry and Kim can encounter a gay man on the balcony called Martin Martinez. Through a string of responses, Kim can say that he's also gay, and that he didn't say anything since he didn't think it would affect the case. Harry, being an amnesiac in an alcohol-fueled depression, can take this news in multiple ways, including stating curiosity at Revachol's very disco homosexual underground. The only time Kim will flat out abandon Harry, in spite of stealing and, bear with me here, a senior citizen's boulet balls, stuffing a body in a bear fridge, threatening to deck a minor, and destroying the hotel the two were staying in, is if the player insults Kim's sexuality. You make that choice, the game calls you out for it. Likewise, Harry's bisexuality can be explored through the thought cabinet and his interactions with Kim. Follow the endurance stats compulsions, and you're not only led down a rabbit hole of fascism, but also complete repression of Harry's bisexuality. The flip side is that Harry can explore his bisexuality through other interactions in Disco Elysium. However, pursuing these is entirely optional. In fact, the thought cabinet says that a murder investigation is not a good time to question one's sexuality. Harry may never interrogate his feelings in the depicted events, and Kim will always carry on being a gay man regardless of what the player does. There's also as another aside, there's a need to talk about the intersectionality between racism and homophobia, but I'm also running a little short on time. So, another topic for another day. Now, if you don't feel confident engaging your themes tastefully, get a consultant. Get a lot of them. And the dark horse here is Ubisoft after botching the Miss Theosophy DLC through DLC content. For those playing at home, Cassandra could be played as a lesbian, but suddenly ended up with a child. With me so far? Ursa is a Croatian operator for Team Rainbow, hired along the Misfits in Nighthaven. Her kit involves laying defensive cover on doors and windows for the attacking teams. She fulfills a niche as a technical creator for Nighthaven and developed a sisterly affection with their leader, Kali. Kali struck a friendship with Ursa after she was isolated for transitioning in engineering school. In context, these details are mentioned in Ursa's in-game psychological profile. For Siege, it makes sense to have her transgender identity tucked away. That's not what Rainbow are looking for. What they're interested in is why she has such a powerful friendship with another character. Regarding physical details, she hasn't had facial feminization surgery. And she's voiced by transgender actress Nicole Maines. A team of transgender consultants, were brought in on Ursa's development cycle and advised on it through to her release. Alive, given appropriate roles and context, and isn't a pastiche. Ubisoft has even gone on record to clarify they always intended for Ursa to be a trans woman. Her identity does not impact her gameplay or being respectful to the demographic she's depicting. Now finally, if you want a shorthand example of themes addressed in content with clear character build-up and continuity, play Coffee Talk. It's roughly $20 out of your day with a chill soundtrack, and you get to make the best cuppas and hot chockies in between some visual novel heartbreak. In particular, pay attention to Myrtle and Aqua's budding relationship, and the gradual shift between Hyde and Gala's dynamics. No spoilers, especially since I want you to put this lecture into practice, but if you've been paying attention, you know why I'm recommending it. Tasteful, accurate representation. Start to finish, even post-credits. Engage with it faithfully. Now, please, everyone, as a queer, transgender, lesbian sister girl, well, indigenous as well, indigenous, for those playing at home, sister girl, I'm an indigenous trans woman, indigenous Australian trans woman. Don't make me tap the sign again. In the same 20-year time frame, we have had outright homophobia in Street Fighter, Code Veronica, and Grand Theft Auto. And we've had groundbreaking leaps in Battletech, Hollow Knight, and Celeste. We're only having this talk because this keeps happening. Examine your symbols, scrutinize your mechanics, challenge your writing. Think about what it is you're rewarding the player for doing. And if you don't trust yourself with it, please hire a consultant. Hire teams of them on your permanent staff. We queers want to help you. But the more these shenanigans happen, the less we trust you. And the less we trust you, even pitch-perfect cases like Ursa are doomed to fail. Shortly after Ursa was released, a huge contingent of backlash came from the trans community itself. Many were quick to blast Ubisoft, the transgender writer, and the transgender consultants. Considering the repeated allegations against the company's ethical practices, it's hard to blame them. If you take away none of the positives, then at least take away this negative. The more you engage in queerbaiting, the less people will trust you. And they will trust you less until they think you cannot do anything right. So, what can you do? Very simply put, tasteful, accurate representation is the goal. Game devs, this is the bar we're raising. To go from mere acknowledgement to creating authentically queer stories humbly and truthfully. Play your cards right, and your most colourful fans will sing you praises until the end of time. Thank you. No pressure. I would also love to give special thanks to Harold Hagen, Jenna Peck, and Lois Spangler. Harold Hagen, JPEG Blue, and Incognitiously for proofreading and for pointing out some various for proofreading and pointing out various queerbaits across gaming, and to Courtney Stewart at Corton Bay for actually pointing out for actually like alerting to me that Axton's voice lines was actually a bug until Tiny Tina's until the Tiny Tina expansion. My links, my bird hellsite blast box is down there at Jaded Cynic. You can also find some of my dialogue driven microgames all the way at these dialogue driven microgames at at itch.io. They're free. That's also on a tipping system, so